Hi everyone. Welcome back to our second episode of BAM GPG. I'm your host, Ben.
I'm your co-host, Bryson.
And just kind of build off a little bit of what we talked about yesterday, Bryson. Kind of taking a little deeper dive into Green Bay's offseason here. We covered a little bit about who some of our free agents will be this coming offseason.
Yeah.
So kind of want to cover that here real briefly. And then we'll kind of take a look at, some of the rumors, possible draft selections, and maybe additions or subtractions for this upcoming offseason. Then kind of towards the end of the show today, we'll take a quick look into the championship weekend and then maybe make some predictions for it. How's that sound?
Mm-hmm.
Good. So as we discussed yesterday, went over some of the free agents. So some of the unrestricted free agents from Green Bay this year, Zane Anderson, Corey Ballantine, some of the notable ones.
A.J. Dillon.
Yeah, A.J. Dillon, McDuffie, Myers, Stokes, and Wilson. So going to be some subtraction this year. And some of our exclusive right kind of restricted free agents for this upcoming year.
Jones, Bo Melton, Aaron Mosley,
Tefert and Daniel Williams and Emmanuel Wilson. Yep, absolutely. So
I really want Daniel Whelan back and Bo Melton.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Daniel Whelan was a weapon for us this year. I mean, he just absolutely puts that ball where he needs to put it and really puts the opposing team's offense in a tough spot. So absolutely need to do what we can to bring him back this offseason. So one that's not on the list, Bryson, that's probably top of the headlines right now is Jaire Alexander.
Yes.
So as we mentioned previously, seems to be a lot of disconnect between him and the organization right now. So seemingly doesn't seem like he's going to be back this year.
Yeah.
Personally, I'm kind of torn on it. When he is out on the field, I love it, right? So when he's happy, seems to be a great locker room guy. I know when we were at Lambeau after one of the games one time, he actually come walking through the parking lot. You remember that?
Yeah.
Yep, he signed your Alexander jersey and signed your football for you. So,
Yeah.
Personally, I think he's a great guy. I'm not quite sure where the disconnect is with the organization, but there seems to be something amiss there. With that being said, just kind of wanted to get your thoughts on, some of the destinations that you think the Packers might move him to when the time comes.
Yeah. I think they'll either just drop him or trade him.
Yeah, so...
And I think if they trade him, they'll try to get one of the top first-round draft picks.
Yeah. That's where it's going to be tough with him. Personally, I feel like he's worthy of first-round talent because, what cornerback are you going to get in the first round that's going to be able to produce like he can out in the field right now? That's kind of where my thoughts are with him, but unfortunately...
Travis
Hunter's good. I don't know if he's going to step in year one and have the same production as what Jaire Alexander would, but for whatever reason in the NFL, it just seems like draft picks are more valued than what actual proven player performance in the NFL is.
Yeah, I don't know why though.
No, and to me, I would rather have the proven draft picks, right? So. There's only so much information you can get from the combines, from college tape, because they're not going against
NFL players.
The level of players that they're going to be going against in the NFL. So it's hard to.
Some of them will go to the NFL, but
yeah, some of them will. It's just hard to get
not all of them.
Yep, just hard to get a good idea of what you're getting until you actually see them against that level of competition.
Yeah.
So, theoretically, I think Jaire Alexander's, absolutely worth a first-round pick. But NFL-wise, if we were to trade him, we're probably, just based off his injury history, and some of the other things he's had going on with the Packers, we're probably looking at a third, possibly upside to a second round pick if we were to go that route. But some of the
I
destination.
think he'll get a first. But
You think
yeah.
no, I absolutely. I think his play value warrants a first, but I just don't think it's valued in the NFL like it should be. Draft picks seem to be valued much higher than what current player production is for whatever the reason may be. So, a couple of the teams that I've read and kind of heard that's kind of out there on the internet right now. The Chargers would be one that people are saying would be a good fit for Jaire, and another one I saw today, which I found interesting, and I think it might kind of work out for him as well, is Baltimore, the Ravens. So I don't know if you know this or not, Bryson, but I believe, I may be wrong, but I believe Jaire and his name eludes me here. Baltimore scored Lamar.
Yeah.
So I think him and Lamar actually, I know for sure they're from the same alma mater, but I think they played college ball together. So it would make sense that he would fit in there, get to play with his old college teammate. So if that happens, possibly a first round because Baltimore just lost in the divisional round, but they're going to have a lower end first round pick. So, possibly, but I still feel like the picks are overvalued to an extent. So we're probably, if we're looking at the trade route, you're probably, realistically probably looking at a third for Jaire. But yeah, those are a couple of destinations I've heard so far. Certainly not going to trade him anywhere within the division. But of the teams I've heard so far, Baltimore probably makes the most sense just because of the connection with Lamar.
Yeah.
So, kind of looking at the Packers team needs for this upcoming season, we kind of touched on it, what our thoughts were. Wide receiver obviously needs address. Definitely a priority for the Packers this coming year, as well as cornerback, because the future of Jaire Alexander, really uncertain at this point, right? Likelihood he's not going to be in a Packers uniform come 2025 season, but we'll see. So cornerback, definitely something we're going to have to address.
Yeah.
And then, as we mentioned yesterday, just kind of the lack of performance from Lucas Van Ness on the field. We're both from Iowa, so we're real partial to any Hawkeyes that come out, especially when they come out onto the Packers. So, still a fan of Lucas Van Ness, just a little bit disappointed in his lack of performance on the field. So, and then offensive line, do you want to touch on that a little bit, Bryson?
Yeah, offensive line. I mean, it's okay, but I feel like we need a replacement for Josh Myers.
Yeah, Josh Myers. So,
He had a really disappointing year.
He had, for all due purposes, he did not have a spectacular season at all. He's certainly a guy that's going to give you 100% effort out there. Just didn't see the results of him this year. And if you actually look at his pro football focused stats for the year, he didn't have, he was towards the bottom in his pass blocking and his run blocking abilities this year. So didn't see a lot of promise out of him this year. So, again, I think he's a guy, he's a high character guy, right? Mm-hmm. So he's going to bring the energy, going to bring the try hard, but just the lack of performance, I just don't see Green Bay
bringing him back.
And if they do, I don't see him in a starter role, right? I think, and it never hurts.
Some depth.
Yeah, absolutely. It never hurts to bring him back and add depth to the offense. So that's one part of the team that you can never have enough depth in, because it always.
Yeah.
I always say, I mean, those guys are in the trenches battling, so it always seems like there's injuries that pop up throughout the year, and you got to have that depth. You got to be able to have a rotation in there, and maybe he's that guy that we bring in as a depth player, kind of a stopgap type of player for us. Absolutely. So definitely going to be some changes on the offensive line. Linebacker, possibly, we have a couple linebackers, McDuffie and Wilson, who are on restricted free agents this upcoming year. So I feel really good about who we have at linebacker right now. Well, our starters anyway right now.
We need some more.
Yeah, absolutely need depth because that's another position too. They're not right in the trenches like the linemen, but it's definitely a high impact position. So definitely going to need to add depth there. I feel pretty good about Walker and Cooper. If Cooper was healthy for an entire season, we may be talking about him as rookie defensive player of the year. I truly believe that. So, we'll be starting the season with him healthy next year, but certainly linebacker is going to be a position in need as far as adding depth to it. Absolutely. So, kind of moving on from that a little bit. So as we get closer to the draft, and we know where the Packers are picking right now, right? So we're 23rd.
Yeah, and I want to talk about last draft.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on last draft?
We just gave away such an opportunity. We could have had Cooper DeJean, but instead we took Jordan Morgan.
Yeah, so
traded back. That was not a good.
Well, and the tough part about that, so we took Jordan Morgan in the first round, and
then he got hurt right away.
Yeah, yep, and again,
Cooper DeJean was the best cornerback in the league.
Yeah, if you look at his PFF grade, yeah, he's absolutely up there. So, as we mentioned before, we're big on the Hawkeyes. So any players that come out of Iowa, we're kind of pulling for them. So we were definitely, come draft day one, day two, we were certainly looking and hoping for him. Even after we took Jordan Morgan, Cooper was still on the board there. He kept falling and falling. So actually would have fell right into our laps in the second round there. And I thought we were going to pick him. And then Green Bay traded that pick away to Philadelphia, if you remember that. And then
I do.
Philadelphia, that's where Philadelphia took Cooper DeJean. So
I do not know why we did that.
No, I mean, that would have been instant improvement over what we had this year. So
Cooper DeJean and Marshawn Lloyd in the second round.
Yeah, that would have been a great round.
Yeah.
So I'm right there with you. I was a little ticked off initially at the draft, and then you kind of look back at it too with Jordan Morgan in the first round. It's a little bit of a head scratcher. I don't think he was projected to go as high as where Green Bay took him, and then to see him not be able to play on the field for basically the entire season was certainly frustrating.
I
for
just
me
do
and
not
you
know why we took
as
him.
a fan. Yeah, so that was a tough one. We're certainly hoping for Cooper. I know I was. So,
Yeah.
we were both right on the edge of our seat when they fell into our laps there in the second round, and then we traded away that pick. So that was disappointing. But could you imagine our secondary if we did have Cooper there? Cooper DeJean, and if we were able to get things right with Jaire, that would be
and X-Man.
Yeah, you got X-Man, Evan Williams. Our secondary would be pretty elite. Absolutely elite. And then with Cooper, too. Same thing he did at Iowa. Return to kicks, return to punts. That would have kind of helped Keyshawn out a little bit and the frustrations he had at it this year.
We could have put Bo Melton and Cooper DeJean
on the kickoffs.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So
that would have been
it's one of those what ifs scenarios, but still a fan of Cooper. I don't know if I'm
the biggest fan of him.
Yeah, a little bitter with the Eagles, but absolutely a fan of Cooper DeJean, that's for sure. I always cheer for him just because he is a former Hawkeye. So, and who knows? weird things play out in the NFL. Maybe he'll end up on Green Bay one of these days. So,
Hopefully.
yeah, I wouldn't complain one bit about that. So, and another guy too, last year's draft. I really felt strong about the Green Bay's probability of bringing him in is Bo Melton's brother. I don't know if you remember him. He came out of last year's draft.
Who was that guy?
He plays cornerback. He's with the Cardinals now. He actually
Yeah.
had a great season for Arizona.
Yeah, we played against him.
Yep.
And we won.
We did. Yep. So he ended up having a pretty good season for Arizona. And it's another one of those misses. We missed out on Cooper. We had Melton fall into our laps too. And, I thought for sure with his brother Bo being on the team, that there was a high probability we'd take a shot on his brother too. But fortunately, that didn't work out either. So.
Yeah, I don't know why, but I feel like we're just bad in drafts.
Yeah, it's kind of hit or miss in the draft, right? There's some years where Gutekunst does real well, but there's some years it's just an absolute head scratcher. And with draft picks, you really don't know until year 2 or 3 down the road where you're at with players. So, example with that, we don't know where we're at with Marshawn Lloyd. He hasn't seen the field this year. We don't know where we're at with Jordan Morgan. So it's hard to pin a grade to the last year's draft just quite yet, because there were some hits, right off the bat in last year's draft. I mean, you look at Bullard, you look at Evan Williams, you look at Edgerrin Cooper, those 3 right there are absolute studs. So, 50-50, who knows if Jordan Morgan pans out, if Marshawn Lloyd pans out, maybe it's an absolute hit in this past year's draft. But just one of those things we won't know until probably towards the end of year 2, going into year 3. But like you mentioned, historically we've had some bad drafts. If you look at 2021 draft,
we have none of those players on our team.
Yeah, currently we don't. The last one remaining, I believe, is Isaiah McDuffie, and he's an unrestricted free agent this year. So if Green Bay doesn't bring him back in this year, there will be nobody from the 2021 draft that still plays on the Packers, which is
bad.
Yeah, it's certainly not a good look. Just a few years removed from that draft, not to have any of those players still around. So I think that they may bring McDuffie back, but there's a possibility they won't. So
we don't know.
Yeah, you don't know. So and if
hopefully. I kind of want them to.
I'm hoping they do, because as I mentioned during our last show here, he seems to fit in well into Hafley's defense. Him and Hafley have that Boston College connection. So, I'm kind of hoping he does. As we mentioned, linebacker depth is certainly something we're going to have to add to this year. So, you don't know. But in the case they don't bring McDuffie back, the 2021 draft, even if you do bring him back, to have one player remaining from that draft, I would still chalk that draft up as a failure. So,
it's
kind of
gotta have at least like half the players.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, just to have one potentially remaining is probably not a good look when we're going into 2025, so less than 4 years removed from the draft. So,
and I'm pretty sure most of the players are still in the league. Wasn't that the draft where we got Kevin King?
No, Kevin King would have been before that. He was probably 2019 or 2020, because
I don't know what draft he was in, but we have no players from that draft.
No.
On our team.
And like I said, I think Kevin King was 2020 or 2019. I'm wanting to lean towards 2019 because I just remember him, and you remember the championship game? I think it was 2020. It was played in Green Bay against Tampa Bay, if I remember right, and Kevin King was just atrocious. I mean,
he was so bad.
I think we picked Tom Brady. If memory is correct, I think we picked Brady off 3 times that game. and we still ended up losing. Just a frustrating. And the one I remember the most is that long touchdown that King just absolutely got burnt on right before halftime. So it certainly was a frustrating game. That was a season where we had pretty high hopes. I felt like we had a good team. It was kind of one of towards the end of Rodgers' time there in Green Bay. So the 2020, 2021 seasons were certainly disappointments, for sure. I think we had the number one overall playoff seed for both years, and to not make the Super Bowl in either of those years, especially when they were Rodgers, Rodgers, the star of COVID, Aaron Rodgers. So he was the MVP that year as well, and then he went back to win another MVP in 2021, and that was the year we lost first round. It was divisional round against San Francisco. We were at that game as well, and that was certainly a nightmare of a game.
Wasn't that a first game?
That was our first playoff game that we attended. Really had high hopes going into that game. I thought we'd do well. It was kind of a weird game. We started off, took the opening drive down the fields. A.J. Dillon had that 1 or 2 yard rush for a touchdown. We were feeling pretty good, and just kind of there was nothing after that.
Wasn't that the game that Aaron Jones got?
Yeah, so that would have been right before halftime when Rodgers found Jones down the field there, and then Jones took that weird route, a weird cutback, instead of running down the side, continuing to run down the sideline, possibly getting out of bounds there for us, and we ended up settling for a field goal right before halftime there.
And he got hurt.
Yeah. And he ended up getting hurt. So, yeah, just a weird game. Had a missed field goal. Had a block punt for a touchdown for San Francisco that game. Just what could go wrong did go wrong that game. We went with one of our buddies we go to a lot of our games with, Mueller, who's first team is the Niners, a big 49ers fan. But
second team is the Packers.
Yeah, he'll cheer for the Packers. He likes to go to a lot of the Packer games. So we're still working on him. Don't have him fully converted yet, but he's close.
No, he's not.
Probably not. So, funny story here. So, if you follow our TikTok account, so one of the things we like to do during the season is do these. We do picks. So I let the kids do picks throughout the season there for every game, and Bryson will do his, and Mueller follows us on TikTok there. So if you haven't followed us yet, follow us, bam.brands on TikTok for your weekly picks, and we share some of our videos of the games we go to. So some fun content to watch. If you haven't followed, go ahead and go on TikTok. It's bam.brands on TikTok. So when Bryson does his picks there on TikTok, he
always picks against
always picks the opposing team of the Niners. So he'll never pick the Niners, specifically just to rub at our friend Mueller. So it doesn't matter who the 49ers are playing, but Bryson
I don't care if they're playing the Titans.
It doesn't matter who they're playing. Bryson will pick the
And it turned out good this year because they went 6-11.
Yeah, this year it worked out well for you. Yeah, it worked out well, so it was kind of a strange year.
Remember, I have this pick'ems and sleeper, and 1 week I went 15-1.
Yeah, no, I remember that. That was
all because of the Ravens losing. I lost.
Yep, I almost had that one. So.
Yep.
But it's kind of a fun thing we do throughout the season, and maybe it's something we'll add on to here, add some picks. But kind of transitioning from this a little bit, Bryson, looking at the championship weekend that we have coming up here. So we got the Kansas City Chiefs taking on the Buffalo Bills, and I think right now, I just logged into my DraftKings account. So right now, the Chiefs are favored by 1.5 at home against the Bills. Typically they give you, rule of thumb is they give you 3 points as the home team. So that kind of tells me the sport books are leaning towards Buffalo on this. What are your kind of thoughts on? And Kansas City's kind of one of those weird teams this year. They've won a lot of games.
But lucky.
It does. It seems like they're doing enough to win. They're doing enough. They just seem to find a way to win at the end, right? So it's not the old Kansas City Chiefs offense, where Mahomes is throwing it down the field, lighting up the scoreboard. Kind of ugly wins, but they're sitting 15-2 for the regular season. So
Yeah.
they're continuing to find a way to win.
The Bills though winning this one. Nobody wants the Chiefs to make the Super Bowl. Commanders are making it to the Super Bowl. Bills are getting the first wing.
So you got the Bills over the Chiefs and Commanders over the Eagles, and the Bills taking the dub.
First Super Bowl level.
Yeah. So just kind of echo your sentiment there. I got some buddies who are Chiefs fans, but unfortunately I got that Chiefs fatigue too, right? So
yeah.
They've won the last 2 Super Bowls.
I absolutely hate the Chiefs.
It just feels like a weird season for Kansas City, right? So ugly wins, but they seem to find a way to get it done. And what kind of worries me about, I guess it shouldn't worry me because I'm a Packers fan, but I'm pulling for the Bills in this game. So what kind of worries me a little bit is that Chiefs defense always just finds a way.
We won against them last time we played them, though.
We did. We beat them last season at home. We were at that game, so it was a fun one to go to. But just kind of that would be the one hesitation I'd have in this game is that Chiefs defense. The Chiefs offense doesn't scare me as much, although Kelsey seems to be turning it on during the playoffs like he typically does. But I think if Josh Allen can continue to do Josh Allen things, I think the Bills will win. They got to avoid turning the. Here's my take. So I think if the Bills can win the turnover battle, I think they win the game.
So
right.
You think it depends on who wins the turnover?
I think whoever wins the turnover battle in this game is going to win the game. So my hopes, my pick, I'm going to go with the Bills, but my gut's telling me whoever wins the turnover battle is going to win this game. Over the NFC side. Philadelphia, Washington. I'm really torn on this one, though, because kind of bitter with Philadelphia. I'm not a big fan of, I don't want to say they're players, but I'm not a big fan of.
I think the Eagles will win, but I want the Commanders.
Yes, kind of where I'm leaning at, too. The Eagles are just kind of finding ways to win right now. Great defense. They're probably overshadowed by their offense a little bit just because of all the big names and stars they have over in Philadelphia on offense. And Saquon, how do you stop Saquon? Right?
We kind of stopped him.
You can kind of stop him, but he's going to have his runs, right? So you know that.
You can't really stop Saquon.
No.
We kind of stopped him, but not really.
Yeah, I mean, Green Bay played well. Our defense played well, and I think that's kind of what you got to do. My thought is you don't want to oversell on the run against Saquon Barkley, right? Because then you're going to be giving up the big plays over top to Brown and can't remember who their other slot receivers. Is it Smith? I can't remember, but yeah, I mean, in Jalen Hurts, he can certainly get out of the pocket and run the ball when he needs to too. But I just don't think you don't want to. In Washington, familiar with Philadelphia, right? Division rivals. They've already played each other twice, split in the season series, 1 game apiece. But that last game that the Commanders did win, Jalen Hurts did leave early that game, so it's not really a.
It was at halftime he left, I think.
Yeah, and in all honesty, Jalen Hurts' production. I mean, he's been okay this year, right? Let me see where he's at for passing on the year. I don't think he has. Yeah, so he's got 2,900 yards, 18 touchdowns, 5 interceptions on the year. So
it's an okay season.
Yeah, it's an okay season. I mean, it's certainly not. You're not going to be adding him into
the person that's killing them.
Yeah, I mean, Barkley had 2,005 yards this year. Would have had more, probably would have broken the record if he had played that last game of the season. But, I mean, Jalen Hurts, by all means, he doesn't have MVP stats this season, so he's definitely beatable. But, again, I don't think you want to overdo it for the run because then you are opening up the pass game. And I think you got to strike that balance. Contain Saquon as much as you can.
Because they have A.J. Brown, too.
Yeah, absolutely. So you don't want to get him going if you're over defending the run. I think you got to find that balance, and you got to accept that Saquon's going to have his runs, right? So you want to be able to contain it.
You're not going to stop him entirely.
Yeah, you're not going to stop him entirely. So you can't let it freak you out. You don't want to.
He's too good.
He is absolutely, and behind that offensive line, it's a pretty stout offensive line. So. Again, you don't want to over defend for the run, but you also want to try to contain them as much as possible. So, my conundrum with this one here is, I'm not a big fan of the Philadelphia, mainly because of the fan base. Not a big fan of them, but do like Cooper. And with Washington, too, just being a Packers fan, having to go through the trials and tribulations with, all the disappointment and failures with Rodgers and, the last 2 years coming up short in the playoffs, to me, it would bother me to see a rookie quarterback lead his team into the Super Bowl. Right? So
yeah, but I also don't want the Eagles to make it.
Right, yeah. So that's a tough one. And again, it's absolutely nothing against Daniels, right? I think he's a great guy, God-fearing guy. So I think he's going to be good for years to come, to be honest with you. I think Washington really struck gold with him. Just doesn't sit right with me if they were to have a rookie quarterback come in. As a Packer fan, I feel like they got to suffer like we did. They got to suffer through some losses in the playoffs. But
at the same time, I also feel like the Eagles, I don't want them to make it.
Yeah, at the same time, just not a big fan of the Philadelphia Eagles. So my predictions, I think it's going to be Bills and Philadelphia in the Super Bowl. I'm not sure who I would lean to on that one yet. Maybe I'll get a better feel for that once it does come. But I certainly would pull for the Bills over the Eagles.
I would hope.
No doubt. Josh Allen, a big fan of Josh Allen, so I would certainly pull for the Bills to win their first Super Bowl if it came down to them in Philadelphia. So looking forward to this weekend's game. We can kind of break down the game a little bit. Here on our next episode tomorrow. But for now, we'll end it with that.
Yeah.
And
as always,
go Pack Go.